boys, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Source Material Comics Podcast. That is correct.
Aren't you like fucking like far right Jesus Bible belting West Virginia coal mining? Where's this like happy holiday shit coming from? Say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Mark Radulich.
Happy Hanukkah, Jesse.
Man, we are getting ready to get into a book that you tossed at me and I've heard about. I've heard actually really good things about this book. By Grant Morrison, art by Dan Mora. This is Klaus, or Claus, as some know. Santa Claus, if you will. Publication date, November of 2015. Come out from Boom Studios. Mark, is this an Ollie special? What's the deal with this one? Why'd you pick this one?
Well, Jesse, it's the holiday season. You and I, one of the traditions here is that you and I always do some sort of holiday-related book around this time. This being close to Christmas and all, I wanted to make sure that I picked another book that we hadn't done yet, because we've done a bunch. Like we did the, what do you call it, The Last Christmas one year.
Right, Slayer.
Yeah, we did Slayer. Like we've done a bunch of these, and this just, so I kind of do like I always do. I went on Amazon and I typed in Christmas comic. You know, after you get past all like the Marvel and DC anthology Christmas books,
yeah,
you know, all 5 million of those, I happened to see this one, and I'm like, oh well, I haven't seen this one before. This looks interesting. This feels like a Mark and Jesse book, so that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, Grant Morrison is quite an accomplished writer. I don't know if you've heard his name before, but
Grant Morrison. Yeah,
okay.
I feel like we covered something by Grant Morrison.
Yeah,
maybe it was like a Doom Patrol book.
Yep, I think you are exactly. And I don't know, it might not have been me that was with you on that one. That might have been a Sheehan thing. Grant Morrison, the other wizard, by the way, aside from Alan Moore, these two have actually had some wizard duels. Yeah, some crazy stuff there. Anyway, and I'm not fucking lying either. Like
We've talked about the Wizards duel with Alan Moore, and I laughed my ass off at that.
So, yeah, I mean, look, you could probably easily find some good Grant Morrison stuff out there. But, yeah, this is Claus, I guess is how I'm going to pronounce it from here on out.
Say hello to Klaus!
Klaus! I've got a synopsis here of this book. Clearly, this is telling a neat adventure of the origins. I think that's the subtitle, isn't it? Like something like the origins of Santa Claus.
It's like Santa Begins or some shit.
Yeah. So I've got a synopsis here. I'll kind of go through it and we'll talk about it here. I'm when you pitched this to me, I was like, Grant Morrison is writing this thing. What could he possibly have in store for us? In the quaint town of Grimsvig, a saga unfolds. Shrouded in darkness and misery under the rule of the tyrant Baron Magnus. At the heart of this story lies Klaus, a man returning to reconcile his past, aiming to rekindle hope and kindness amidst the town's despair. Now, I got to give you a backstory on Klaus. He was raised in Grimsvig, served loyally under Lord Ulrich until treachery stained his name. Falsely accused of Ulrich's murder by Magnus, Klaus, I'm going to do it 3 or 4 different ways tonight. Klaus was...
Claude.
Chester was cast out into the unforgiving wilderness. Saved by Lilli, a white wolf he once rescued, Klaus had sworn never to return until destiny intervened. The town of Grimsvig groans under Magnus's iron rule. Men toil in the treacherous coal mines and children live in fear as the Baron seeks to unearth a malevolent force to feed on their innocence. Klaus's return sparks a glimmer of hope, defying the Baron's orders by gifting joy to the children, inspiring thoughts of rebellion amongst the townsfolk. Whispers of a demonic voice echo through the Baron's actions, hinting at a pact, which I'm going to say this is Krampus.
That was my thought.
Yeah, there's not a name given to this demon, but it definitely reminds me of Krampus. We got a big horned demon that comes out of the earth here. But there's a pact between Magnus and Krampus for power, and Lady Dagmar, torn between her past affection for Klaus and her allegiance to the Baron, which she did marry and have a child with, grapples with the truth of her father's demise and her son Jonas's troubled nature. Mysterious spirits of the Northern Lights bestow Klaus with eternal life and the power to create joy through mystical toys. Empowered and resolute, Klaus confronts the Baron and faces the unleashed terror, a bloodthirsty creature seeking to ravage Grimsvig. In a climactic battle, Klaus valiantly fights the creature, sacrificing himself to save.
Sorry, every time you do that, I was like, what are you doing? Happy birthday, dear Chester.
Chester. There you go. Klaus valiantly fights the creature, sacrificing himself to save Grimsvig. Resurrected by the spirit's magic, he defeats the beast, ending the Baron's reign. Jonas, saved from the creature's clutches, finds redemption through Klaus's influence. Now, the conclusion of this book, peace returns to Grimsvig. Klaus marries Lady Dagmar, becoming a beacon of hope and a father figure to the town. And eventually he bids farewell, journeying to the north with Lilli and his mystical sleigh, promising to return annually, ensuring the town remains steeped in joy. You and I, just like you said, we've talked some other Christmas carols before, some other Christmas tales. This is different, I feel, than what we've covered in the past. It feels like there's a more solid foundation for a story here, in my opinion. But anyway, what'd you think, man?
I mean, I'm always thinking about like movies and stuff. Like,
He's thinking movies.
Movie. Well, and that was my first thought as I read this was, oh, this feels like a good storyboard for a fantasy movie, but a fantasy movie you could put out around Christmas time. I love the idea of essentially you have a hunter or wild man. Oh God, what was the character class of Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings?
He was a ranger. Yeah.
Like that kind of character. He has a past with the queen. They were lovers, and she ran away from him to seek power. And of course, like every woman, she leaves her guy, goes for that she thinks is the grass is greener over here. It doesn't quite work out that way, but you don't find out until after. And so you have sort of the steward of the town who's taken control and made it tyrannical and robbed people of all of their wealth and resources. So the stranger comes back to town, and it's not the town he left. And it's like almost like a Western in that sense, where it's this guy, he left, he came back, things aren't the way he was. He has to set things right. He has to save the town from the tyrannical whoosy-whatsy. That's all like well-worn territory, and I think it works really well with the story. I have to tell you, as you were doing the synopsis, and I was thinking about like the son, the prince character, and he they take all the toys in the land, because they want to keep him happy, and of course no toy is ever good enough. And all I could think about is the kid from Yogi's First Christmas.
Okay, explain, because it's been a while.
Have you seen Yogi's First Christmas?
I don't know if I have. I feel like I probably have, but I cannot recall.
So I think it's like the owner of the lodge is this elder woman, and like she brings her nephew up for the holiday, and he's a spoiled brat, and he ends up like joining forces with the old Hermit the Hermit out in the wilderness. They want to bring down Christmas because life is unfair and nothing is ever good enough. Like Hermit the Hermit just doesn't want all these people on his fucking mountain at the ski lodge. And the kid's pissed off because like he's an entitled spoiled brat. So they gang up together to take down Yogi in Christmas. It's great.
Oh jeez.
And the kid's like a bag of shit. He like cheats and everything. He's awful. He's like Snidely Whiplash, but it's like, but it's like Snidely Begins. That's what the kid reminded me of. It was like they just spoiled this kid fucking rotten, and he can't see past his own nose. When and so I love the idea of like Klaus goes into the woods and he gets like he's not Superman. He gets around a good beating. By the guards.
Yeah, he does.
And and then it's like the spirit of Christmas, revives him.
Which, by the way, I mean, I'm sitting there going like, where the fuck did these aliens come from? Why are there aliens in this book? And I thought it was interesting that they used that kind of way to depict these spirits. Granted, I mean, you could do whatever you want in your book, but I thought it was definitely like, okay, these things are very alien-like.
I was gonna say it was very not Christmassy.
Yeah, I mean, okay, they just come down. Now, my assumption is like they were there. I can't remember if this is spelled out in the book or not. I feel like it's not, but I feel like they've been put on the earth, or at least came to the earth in order to like provide like a champion to fight against Krampus or this demon. But of course, yeah, it definitely felt of all the things in this book, that was probably the thing that stood out to me the most, where I was like, what in the world? Like that's the thing that kind of took me out.
It was it's weird that in your fantasy tale we have this like, let's take a moment for psychedelics. It's like, wait, what?
I mean, I guess we've got to get Klaus super powerful and immortal. I guess this is the way we're going to do it.
What I was getting to was like they take all the toys from the children in town so that the prince will not feel like he's missing out on anything. And so one of the first things Klaus does is he delivers toys to the kids. And it's like, hey, that's a Christmas tradition. We give toys to children on Christmas Day. And so, like, well, where could that have possibly come from? It's funny. I was talking to Robert on a previous podcast because this will air sometime in the future. But I was talking to Robert about how, like, we were having a whole conversation related to the new Hunger Games movie, you know, whether or not it is necessary or a good thing to make a prequel. And there's the good kind of prequel where there's this character. You want to learn more about him. It's an interesting story he has to tell. Watching him fall from grace, watching the tragedy of this character is actually an interesting story. That's the good kind of prequel. That's a prequel worth making. Then there's the bad kind of prequel where it's where did Han Solo get his vest? Who the fuck cares?
Hey, look at those dice. He's hanging those dice on the... Oh, that's crazy.
I know the dice. I know that I've seen that before. I think as sort of a framework is to make a list of things we do around the holidays and think, well, where might they have come from in sort of like a pagan fantasy tradition? Because, you know, there's definitely a lot of the Christmas tradition that comes from paganism that the Christians just kind of adopted. It's like, hey, we need more people to buy into Christianity. Well, what about the pagans over there? They kind of got their own thing going on. Okay, well, what if we do their thing?
We'll claim it.
What if we start tree worshiping and lights and, you know, and all this other stuff? And they're like, and, you know, and the pagans are just like, well, I mean, if we get to still be pagans, but also be Christian, sure, whatever. Go away, Constantine. Anyway, so I like the idea of, in this fantasy world, all these things that we take for granted now as part of Christmas traditions had like a natural, organic, authentic origin. That's kind of a fun concept. As the story unfolds, the other thing about this is it's a lot of well-worn fantasy tropes, but I think it was executed well. So you have the villain who literally made a deal with the devil and then was surprised when the devil didn't own up to his end of the bargain.
Right. He's at the end and he's demanding him too. Like this thing stands like, I don't know, 15 feet tall, if not taller. And he's like, you know, I did this for you. You owe me this. Oh, right. Okay, sure. And then fries his ass for his trouble.
Did you ever see Natural Born Killers?
No, I have not.
There's a great bit in Natural Born Killers where they tell a story about a snake. Like the snake is somehow damaged, it's injured or whatever, and the guy nurses the snake back to health. And once the snake is healthy, it bites him. And they're like, well, why? I took care of you. I nursed you back to health. I did everything. And the snake goes, I'm a fucking snake. What do you think I was going to do?
That's a parable right there.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like that's well-worn territory in fantasy. It's like, I'm going to make a deal with this demon entity, this entity of evil. And then I'll be absolutely surprised when the evil entity acts evil and doesn't, spare me. So on the one hand, Klaus is very familiar. On the other hand, it takes a very familiar structure and dresses it up with Christmas stuff, and that's a lot of fun. And I really like the book. It's not particularly deep. I can't really pull much else out of it. But as far as a fun tale, something interesting that we haven't talked about, here's the other thing. Like, I remember talking to you about Last Christmas last year, I think it was, or the year before, and I was like, God, this is cynical. And we've done a couple of those like that. We're like, ooh, it was a fun book to talk about. It gave us stuff to talk about for the podcast, but I do remember, thinking to myself, some of these writers needed to go for a fucking walk, get a hug or something, hug a fat chick with big tits. That'll make you feel better. Like, do something. Smoke pot, eat a cookie, jerk off, do something. Like, why are you so depressed? I didn't get that with this one. This one feels like it was imbued with hope and authentic goodness. It was, if you're a fantasy person, like high fantasy, I think it's a delightful read. It's just not also very deep.
I guess as far as themes go, we've seen a bit of an uptick. At least I feel like we've seen a bit of an uptick in tales of Santa being like a pretty violent dude.
Oh my God. Well, I think that's what I was getting at. It's like there's so much deconstruction of Santa to where, Santa's, it's the Family Guy thing. The spirit of Christmas is dead. It's all about commercialism and greed. And so they project that onto the character of Santa, where Santa is beleaguered. Santa is struggling in some way, like a lot of like the Last Christmas was like what it was like terrorist kills Mrs. Claus, and so he starts like he's drunk or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, it was violent and bloody, and it was great.
Like this deconstructs Santa in a more positive way. It was like it kind of has that Solo vibe to it of like, well, how did Santa get his sack? You know, why does Santa deliver toys? That kind of thing. Where does the Santa magic come from? But again, you can fucking LSD. Who put PCP in my gingerbread man cookie?
I had no idea that was part of a Christmas tradition. I need to start doing that around the house now.
PCP, I recommend it. A little PCP in your hot chocolate. It'll be fun for the whole
sprinkle
family.
it right on there. It's good for you.
That's right. Now, I think this does that Solo thing more competently than the people who did Solo. It felt more natural. Like, oh, I get where this is coming from now. I know why they're doing that. So I really like the book.
I think one of the things that kind of stick out to me here in this book is, just like I said, we've had this kind of uptick about violent Santa Clauses. Yeah, that's right.
Claus eye.
Recently, as far as movie goes, we had Violent Night, which I think that was last year with David Harbour as Santa Claus. And I mean, good movie.
Yes, great movie. One of the best ones of last year.
But yeah, this is just like you said, this is more as violent as it can get. It's definitely not over the top, gory, bloody, or anything like that. I do love how, the theme here is like Claus has to try and, number one, he's got to try and get back into town. And because he comes back into town, all sorts of crazy stuff starts happening. He starts to realize that the townspeople and everybody in it are just completely miserable. The only way that he can maybe start to sow a little bit of, I put this in the synopsis, sow a little bit of rebellion is to openly defy everything that the Baron is doing by trying to spread joy, which is just, it's a simple thing, giving kids toys, but it's more about bringing the joy to the children. It really starts to make like the people that are subjugated to the mines, the fathers and stuff like that, realize like, why are we here being miserable for this guy? What are we doing? And they start to buy into this. Like, we don't need to be miserable. And Claus kind of pushes that. He beats the big guard, gets sent after him. He ends up whipping the guard's butt, and the guy is like upside down, laying upside down against the wall. And he kind of sits there, and he could have left that guy sitting there, but he decided to have some fun in order to spread some joy. And he dressed the guy up as a snowman with his legs sitting as the arms, which was hilarious. And again, it was all about Claus trying to spread this joy. And then, of course, the Baron continues to, like, sometimes the guards get the upper hand. And then, of course, at the end, he is left for dead out in the wilderness. And that's when the spirits from the Northern Lights come down and give him, they put it like a gem on his head or something. Very strange, but definitely give him the power enough to go back into town. He gets run through by a sword at one point during the big conflict, but he comes back, no problem. This was done fairly well. I think it's neat to see kind of like the origins of what happened here and how he becomes Santa Claus and where it all came from, why spreading joy with toys and presents was so important to him. And yeah, the Jonas kid, we talked about Jonas. Jonas is a spoiled, rotten kid. And then when things start to turn is when his mom sits down with him, pays a little bit of attention, and they begin to play together.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really sweet scene.
Yeah, he's like, oh, but I think he says something along like, won't father be upset? Because like you can't play or a lot of that is because Baron Magnus is his whole motivation is to spread misery so that when Krampus comes out, it's going to be a feeding frenzy. And of course, he unfortunately fattened up his boy for that by spoiling him like he did for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I thought as far as Christmas books go, this is probably one of the better ones that I've read. This Slayer was entertaining for what it was, but this is definitely, I think, well above Slayer, in my opinion, if you were going to compare those two. And as far as The Last Christmas, I think I appreciated Last Christmas just because of its brutality.
I feel like we had more to say about Last Christmas, but there was a lot of like editorializing about the commercialism of Christmas,
right?
Which I think really bugged the shit out of you.
Correctly. Oh yeah, I'm sure it did.
If I remember correctly on that podcast, you and I kind of went back and forth about how like Black Friday sales and things of that nature. Like, people lose sight. I think I remember talking about how I really appreciate like the joy of Christmas, and I used to enjoy like being with family, and this was a time of like appreciate the people around you, take time with your kids. It's not about the gifts, it's about the thoughtfulness, it's about the togetherness. It's that end of the celebration of their, and looking forward into the next year and hopefully going through it together, and hopefully maybe things are better this year than they were last year. And I remember talking about all that and how like last Christmas was like a contrast. It was like it was definitely an editorialization about how people have just utterly lost sight of what Christmas is supposed to be about, and it got expressed through this like violent Santa character. There's nothing like that here in Klaus necessarily.
No.
It's literally because you could take the Christmas stuff out of it, and you still have a high fantasy story. Stranger comes back to town, finds it's being terrorized and in tatters. An evil dictator is essentially creating the negative emotion goo from Ghostbusters 2, so that he can bring about the demon, and the demon can make him king. Tales all the time.
It is, really. I mean, there's probably about 4 or 5 movies you could think of off the top of your head that fit that exact narrative.
Yeah, I was going to say at least.
Yeah. And so Grant's like, okay, I'll take that, and then I'll weave a little bit of Christmas into it. And I don't think, he probably didn't have to stretch his legs too much here. I do want to give Dan Mora credit. The art in this book is pretty impeccable. I think that I had a fun time reading it. Let's go ahead and get into plugs here. We talked about Klaus. What do you got going on at this time in the old podcast-averse?
Listen, it's Christmas time in Hollis, Queens. Mom's cooking dinner in Collard Greens, and I'm doing podcasts. And you can find all those podcasts on W2MNetwork.com. You can find the video of these shows. You can see my gorgeous, hunky face, along with the rest of these dorks, on YouTube at W2M Network on YouTube. And more importantly, and Jesse, I don't know if you know this or not, but my son is a budding comedian.
I've heard.
He's doing bits. Do your kids do bits? My son does bits.
No, my kids do not do bits. Well, I mean, actually, the bit that they do is bring me something and show me on TikTok and tell me how funny it is. That's their bit.
My son, time travel, a few months ago.
Oh.
Maybe a month ago, it's on TikTok right now, as a matter of fact, did an entire bit on bread. Bread makes everything bitter. You could put a piece of poop between 2 pieces of bread, and the bread would instantly make the poop better. And you could eat it. That's what he said.
I think that's fantastic.
My son suggests put poop on bread and eat it. He'll be delighted. My son, the apple of my eye, the brightest 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old you're ever going to meet, Jesse, he's doing fucking like stand-up comedy now. He might bring you a bag of popcorn and be like, what the fuck is gourmet popcorn all about? Does it taste better than regular popcorn? What makes it gourmet? Does that mean the other popcorn is garbage? He said that.
Wow.
He might also want to tell you a thing, Jesse, like Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson would like to tell you about the aliens he got into recently, or read a list to you. He's really fond of lists. My son wants to tell you all about FNAF. Have you heard about the FNAF, Jesse?
Oh, I have heard about the FNAF.
Yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's is what the adults call it.
That's correct.
But the cool kids say FNAF.
Yeah,
and he's on my TikTok right now telling you all about the FNAF.
That's great. That's what we need. I'm glad he is picking up the sword that I will not. So great.
So yeah, speaking of picking up your sword and holding it and waving it around at unsuspecting women, you can check out my TikTok where my son is doing stand-up comedy, and my concert footage and clips of this podcast, which is really the most relevant thing I can bring up here. I'm at Mark Radulich on TikTok. I'm also at Mark Radulich on X. Have you heard it on the X, Jesse? Because apparently X is losing sponsors left and right because Elon Musk might be an anti-Semite. I don't know if you heard about this.
Oh boy. What did he say? Well, actually, I'll probably have to look it up.
It's the unfettered hate speech is the problem. So everyone's going to Threads now, is what I've heard.
Oh, really? Yeah. Everybody's on Blue Sky too, from what I understand.
Okay, I'm too old. I don't want to keep changing social media platforms.
I'm so sick of it.
Yeah.
I am on Facebook and I am on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and that's kind of where I think we're ever going to be. Nothing else will ever catch on.
If something becomes more popular than TikTok, I don't care. I'm sticking with TikTok until it goes away.
I would still be doing the Periscope videos if I could.
So yes, W2M Network on the web, W2M Network on YouTube, W2M Network on Twitch. at Mark Radulich on TikTok, at Mark Radulich. I heard it on the X. And if you would like for me to take you on a sexy date, maybe a naked swimming date, maybe some karaoke, naked or otherwise, I am Mark Radulich LCSW on Facebook. How about that, Jesse?
Whoa.
I'm giving out my social media contacts. What am I on Snapchat?
Good.
Let's see. Ladies, if you would like to send me naked pictures of your genitalia on Snapchat, I am MarkHine76. How about that, Jesse?
I was not expecting that to be on the plugs. Not at all.
I'm in a mood.
Hey, yeah, listen, you can go check out the Source Material Comics podcast. Most likely you are listening to it right here on the Source Material Comics feed, where we hit you with the Source Material Comics podcast at least twice a month. I would think, maybe even more sometimes. We have a couple other shows on here. We got the Unspoken Issues podcast, where we talk about 90s comics, and Evan Bevins and myself discussing Marvel Snap once a month. Snap Material, folks. You can check that out. Well, that being said, that is Mark. I am Jesse. We're out of here. Thanks for joining us. Have a happy holiday season.
We want to wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
There it is. All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.
Are we officially starting? Because if you're going to start with Happy Holidays, I have to give you a ration of shit. Kiss your family and friends goodbye. Say hello to Klaus.
I'll just change the name. Just start your family playlist and
please do. That'll be another thing that was taken from me this year.
Oh no! Oh no! You know, none of the art ever took me out. I think it was done very well.
It's definitely not Scott Keith. It's like actually it looked like people.
I just want you to get his name wrong like 90 more times, okay?
Francis
Scott Keith. Yes.
I'm glad that I could give you the gift of me, naked me. I'm naked while we're doing this podcast.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I want you to picture that in your mind's eye. Merry Christmas.
All right. So this is the first and only book we're doing tonight. So Mark gets closed on.
Okay, I'm gonna message you pictures.
Don't message me anything. I don't want to see anything unless it's a shark prostitute or something along those lines.
If I send you naked pictures of me, but I'm wearing a shark's fin, that do. Jesse, please move this on. I'm rambling. Jesse.
Yeah, Mark.
If Evan ever complains about Marvel Snap, just know that I'm here waiting for you.
Oh boy. I wonder how many shows I could get out of you about Marvel Snap. Probably about one and a half.
Why are you only wanting to do Marvel? You know, Jesse, I have played every level of Oregon Trail.
Yeah, let's do an Oregon Trail podcast together. How's that sound?
I would like to do the Oregon Trail mobile game for your cell phone podcast.
I tell you what, you got your own network.
Jesse,
why don't you test the waters?
Jesse, how do you feel about Monopoly Go? I hear that you're not consenting, but I feel like it's a consensual, non-consensual game.
Yeah. I need to put something in the chat GPT right now. The Marvel Snap, yes, with Snap Material, where Snap Material, that's right. Snap Material is where Evan and myself talk about
Material.
Marvel Snap.
I just want to make sure it was Snap Material.
It is Snap Material. So there you go, folks, the 7 issues of Claus, the beginning of Santa Claus, or Santa Claus Begins, or Here Comes Fucking Santa Claus.
Jesse's all out of fucking patience tonight, man. Merry fucking Christmas.